My final decision is not made with consciousness. My final decision is made with heart. The heart doesn't do step by step by step. It doesn't care about that. The heart reads energy. And it says, if I do this, do I add energy to my system or do I lose energy? That's all it says.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. D. Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships podcast. I'm D. Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we are coming to you live. This is the first episode of June. And we are really excited to announce a reformatting of sort that we're going to start taking on in this podcast. Sophie and I have been thinking a lot about how to make this, and we listened to your comments and what you're telling us, and how to make this more cohesive for you. And so what we decided to do, we're going to have thematic months. Instead of seasons, we're going to have months of where we follow specific themes. And this is the first month we're doing that. So we're really, really excited. This interview is going to kill it as a starting point for this theme. What's going to happen is at the beginning of every month, we'll have kind of a seminal, the biggest interview that focuses on a specific theme. Then we're going to follow that up with a few other experts where we'll go back to that theme with them. And then Sophie and I will drop our Going Deep episode at the end of the month, putting all the pieces together from the concept of what we had learned that month and all the experts that we talked to and all that wonderful, wonderful stuff. And that way, every month you can look forward to really diving deep with us on a topic that we find interesting that always has something to do with relationships. And this month, the theme is going to be the relationship between your biology, your body, your physical nature, and spirituality and the experience, the psychological experience you end up having in the world. So it's going to be a really, really fun one. And we've got Bruce Lipton, which I was kind of fanboying over this interview, and I was really, really excited to get Bruce on.
Fanboy.
Yeah. Because there's like fan.
Yeah. It's just funny. It's just funny to hear you say it about Bruce Lipton, like fanboy. Like to hear you
100%
say you're fanboying for him
100%.
is just.
Maddie knows it's true.
I know it's true.
I was stalking
just
him
hearing
to get him on.
it out loud is amazing.
I'm glad I was able to provide that for you. So Sophie's going to read you a little review.
So this most recent review we got on Sunday from Emma SB7 said, "This podcast is perfect for anyone who needs to reconnect with themselves. Sophie and Adi are so real and give you real life experiences to help you understand and figure out how to use those difficult times to heal and grow. I've been following Sophie on Instagram for a while and everything she does is so inspiring. Thank you so much." Thank you, Emma. That's the nicest, sweetest. We love these reviews. And just so you know, this means so much to us and makes a huge difference when you go on and rate us and give us an honest rating. If we're a 4, give us a 4. If we're a 4.5, give us a 4.5. Give us a 5 and we'll probably read it on live. And then also give us, be radically transparent and give us a review about what you love about the podcast so that we can keep getting better and share the love.
Amen. And hashtag truth that everything that Sophie does is incredible because that's just the way it is, and that's why I married her.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. That voice.
Thank you.
Is that like the automated? It's like the automated voice
Come
you
again.
would get.
Say it again.
Totally. Is it like a recording? This is your real live sounding secretary. Okay. So I'm going to read a quote from Bruce's book, which I have dog-eared in about, I would say like 300 places.
Yeah, he was really into this book. It's really beautiful to have witnessed you be so into it and then have him as a guest. It was just really cute.
I know. And you turned around initially like, why do you want, he's a biologist, why do you want me on this thing? And then you sat down with him, you're like, favorite human.
Yes.
He's really amazing.
I love him.
This is all about relationship. And again, like I said, the book is called The Biology of Belief, and it is about the relationship between biology and your experience in the world. And so he has this quote from Mahatma Gandhi, which is, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. Talk about the relationship between everything right there. But then he follows it up with, when we change the way we perceive the world, that is when we change our beliefs, we change the blood's neurochemical composition, which then initiates a complementary change in the body's cells. The function of the mind is to create a coherence between our beliefs and the reality we experience. And the reason I think this is such an
fucking men,
right? And like the reason I think this is so important is I come from the science angle of things, and it's only, Sophie, through my relationship with you and our interaction over now 15 years that I came to believe what is in that quote as fact, right? Like, the way we interact with the world is so driven by the way we see it and the beliefs we have about what is going to end up manifesting for us. That is what manifestation is about, right?
When the single thought that you start with, that
when we live from a place of seeing the world in a certain way, that literally creates a change, a chemical, a physical change in our body, our blood, our brain, and that change then alters the perspective, the approach, the way we behave with everybody around us, how attracted everybody is around us to who we are and what we bring into our life. And then that ends up manifesting into the kind of life that aligns with our beliefs. So when you surround yourself with darkness and fear and anxiety and pain, that creates a physical way of being, a fear and anxiety based body that you live with. And when you live from that place, everybody relates to you as if fear and anxiety are the truth, because they are the truth that you're projecting. And the next thing you know, you end up finding yourself surrounded by anxiety and fear. And you think that that's reality, but what it is in actuality is your manifestation of your internal state into your external environment.
Yeah, we are the people that we spend our time with. We are the energy that we expose our bodies and our minds to. If you are hanging out at the same coffee shop and it's dark and moody and they play dark music, and like it's that automatic, and it's impossible to shed that. It's impossible to ignore it. Like if you for example, like when I was teaching yoga all the time or personal training, like I picked up people's energy all day long. I'd walk into a class and I'd feel the energy shift right away because there's so many different energies in the room.
Yeah.
And then I'd be touching them. I'd be adjusting them. I'd be talking to them after class. I'd be feeling them during class. And I'd have all that energy within me. Now that I'm a mom, it's similar and different. But even through Instagram, I'm not even physically touching people or face to face or sitting in a room with them. But the energy that I surround myself with, even on social media through a device, affects me. By the end of the day, if I've had a lot of intense conversations with people, it bogs me down. It weighs me down. Then I need to do a practice to release that energy. So in the same respect, even more important, what choices are you making throughout your day? What do you want? Like, start at the end. What do you want to feel like? What do you want your life to look like? And then go backwards from there. If you want to have a life full of joy and ease and grace and love, what steps do you need to take to get there? What actions do you need to take?
Isn't it?
Who do you need to spend your time with? What, it goes every dimension.
But it's funny, right? Because this is, I think for a lot of people, the opposite of the way they actually see the world. The way they see the world is there's a reality out there and their job is to adjust to that reality.
No.
What we're saying here is
there are so many different.
There are an endless number of realities. You get to figure out which one you want to fit into
100%.
and relate. And it's the same thing I say to people all the time, like when people talk about LA people. We had this conversation with a lot of people. They say LA people are like this. I said, well, that's the LA people that you're going out for.
Yeah. That's not how I perceive
If that's
LA.
how you see LA, then that's what you do. You think it's all about the clubs and dressing up for the bars and trying to find celebrities to like drink with or hang out with, because that's how you see the city. So that's what you're looking at and looking for all the time.
Does that even like sound like the same language I speak? Like I don't even know what the words are that you just said because it's so not.
But you've heard it from people before. We hear that.
Not even because I don't even associate with people like that. However, my perception is a 180 of like hiking and nature and yogis and wellness and green juice on every corner. Like that's my reality that I choose to see and live in. And you can literally have anything that you want in life, reality-wise and perception-wise, but it starts with a choice and a decision. And we've talked about the power of a decision and really deciding what it is you want. Like, this is the reality I'm going to have at the end of the day. What does that mean? I have to talk myself out. I mean, I am a very naturally positive, optimistic person. And when I'm going through something, like yesterday, I had to cancel plans. I was really disappointed. I had a really fun event I wanted to go to celebrate Mother's Day. And I had to cancel it because I had a deadline. I had to edit a movie. I'm not an editor. I'm not a video editor. And I had to do this thing. And it was a deadline. I didn't have a choice. I spent several hours doing it. I was frustrated, and I felt myself starting to kind of spiral. And like, I had to figure out, what do I want from this day? It's only 2:00. My day is not ruined. It's been hard, but it's not ruined. How can I make up for it? So I put my phone away. I went outside. I laid in the grass. And that was the beginning. And then I knew, okay, to feel a certain way, I need to feel less stress. Okay, so I need to figure out how I'm going to get to a yoga class today. I need to figure out how I can get to be alone. I need to put boundaries up with my manager, with my loved ones. It all starts with a thought. And if you can go from, what do I want to feel like? There are certain steps you can do to feel that way.
And so for so many of the people listening right now, because I know I work with a lot of people who struggle with, 8 different steps along the way of what you just described, right? The thinking that because I'm starting to have a shitty day, I'm going to have a shitty day.
For sure.
They give it up right there.
And that is the most empowering when it comes to eating disorders, addictions, disordered thinking, anything that weighs you down and paralyzes you. You have the power, and it just takes one decision.
That's
and
what
one
pisses
step.
me off so much about the idea of I'm powerless as the first step to winning over something is like, you've got all the power in the world, people. Just pay attention, and you have all the power in the world. So first of all, the first point of power is to say, I don't need to have this kind of a day. I'm not enjoying this day. I can change it. That's the first piece. The second piece is to start small, which I think is really, really big that you just mentioned, because a lot of people, even if they realize that they have the power, they think to themselves, okay, what will make this an epic day instead of a shitty day? And what you did there is the first thing you did is you pause and you put a break between I'm stressed out about missing this event, etc., and went out and did something that you knew would give you some energy. You sat outside, took your shoes off, enjoyed the sun, give yourself a moment of respite to turn it around.
I asked my Instagram followers the other day, what's something that you do to drop in? And the majority of people said get out in nature or hike in nature with an animal or a loved one. And also putting their phones away and putting all devices away. So I'd say 80% of people either said, put my phone on airplane mode, put my phone down, or get outside, go to nature. So if 80% of my followers did that, there's a really good chance that when you're in a panicked moment, if you aren't in tune with what makes you feel empowered, better, joyful, one step that I would suggest is put your phone away and walk outside.
Yeah.
And you'll be 80% of the way there. You'll be on your way. And then you'll get quiet enough. And we talk about intuition all the time. Kind of a broken record over here, but I'm never going to stop.
Got to use the tools.
And that's what my gift is here, is to share with the world how to be more in tune with their truest self. So I want to share that with all of you. And I polled 120,000 people and asked them, what makes you feel dropped in? What allows you to feel on your path and your best version of you? And yes, a yoga class. Yes, going away for an hour. But what about taking 4 minutes, putting your phone down, taking your shoes off, and going in the grass?
Yeah. So you know what I do that I started doing recently, because I'm bad at this, right? Like I'll sit at my computer for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
Well, power through it doesn't, but I kind of lose my sense. I'm not aware that I'm powering through. I just sit there. So one of the things that I started doing is when I have phone calls, most of the time I'll take them outside walking. So it's not exactly disconnecting to the level that you're talking about, but like I took a 30-minute call today and I walked probably a mile and a half, but also I was outside.
Yeah.
And so you get the nature, you get breath, you
hear the birds chirping.
Yeah, and you get connected. You just at least way more connected than otherwise. And so for some of you who are listening right now are saying, well, I don't have the luxury of in the middle of my day just sitting around on the grass.
Yep.
I don't have that available to me. You can do something like that, right? Like take a call on your cell phone and go out of the office. Walk outside. Right now it's warm.
It's teeny steps. And even just moving your body, like he's saying, like, never mind you're outside. That's the bonus. Like, you're outside in nature. Maybe the sun's out. Maybe it's cool and crisp and you can feel and connect to your body and the way the wind feels on your skin. Moving your body just in itself can regenerate and restart you.
And so pay attention. What we're saying is there's a dual connection, right? So if we go back to the quote from Bruce, he doesn't want to be called Dr. Lipton. So from Bruce, we know in psychology, there's this research that has shown us that people who are happy are not objective. When I grew up, I had this sense in my head that the job was to find out the truth and live objectively according to the truth. People who are happy are not objective. They see the world through these rose-colored glasses.
100%.
And not a lot of us, some people look down at that and they say, well, that's not what you should do. What you should do is connect to the reality. But if I know that my beliefs, as Mahatma Gandhi said, my beliefs go all the way from affecting my perspective on the world to my values and my point and my purpose in the universe. Why don't I want to elevate that if I know that that's going to change something? So why don't I want to believe that I can do more? Why don't I want to believe that I can get out more? Why don't I want to believe that I can be more connected, affect more people, create more positivity in the world than I ever did before? Because if I get to really believe that, and you can't lie to yourself about this, you got to find a way to really believe it, then you get to project that to the world and then you create impact.
Right.
And I was talking to a woman just this morning when I was doing that 30-minute walk and talking to this woman who was interested in signing up for one of the programs. And we talked and she was like, I don't know what's going on with my drinking. I don't know what I'm going to do about it, et cetera. I said, forget your drinking for a second. We got to let go of the drinking. Who are you? What do you want? What are you trying to become? Stop trying to temper yourself and be what everybody else needs you to be, and then figuring out how you can do that without alcohol to make you feel okay as you're anxious about life. Let's figure out who you are and build a life that excites you. And that really made her happy, and we were talking. She was really into it. And in the end, she went right back to, okay, so what do I do about the drinking?
Right.
And I was like, I love that you're so honest with me about this, but just pay attention to what you're doing. It's almost as if, imagine if you're like a sculptor or a carpenter and you said to yourself one day, well, I lost my brush. How can I paint without that brush? Pick up another fucking tool. A painter is not about a brush. A painter is about painting. It's about creating art. A singer is about expressing, through vocals, light and hope and joy. That's the gift. And if you can connect to that, there's more waiting for you on the other side. Your body will respond. The people around you will respond. Your job, your friends, your family, they will all come up when you allow yourself to start believing and seeing the true light that you have.
100%. This episode is beautiful. I'm excited for you guys to listen. Please give a screenshot and share your favorite quote or moment from it and tag ignited.me, Bruce Lipton, and Adi and I, or at least just Ignited. Yeah. And we can reshare it. We love hearing your feedback on it, and we just want to hear what your takeaways were, if you had any aha moments or just things that made you feel good.
Totally. And because I love Bruce so much, and I'm actually trying to bring him back for some more Ignited stuff, do me a favor, guys, tag the hell out of the post with him so that he sees how much you guys appreciate everything that he shares. It's magical to see a guy who came from full on like microbiology, learning about how cells work, all the way to the power of energy and what can happen in the world.
So inspiring.
Love you guys. See you on the other side. This interview is going to kill you. Bye.
This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fixes all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy Superfood and Protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
Before we get into it all, my wife's going to come down in a minute, and it's actually it's a good marriage, but also it's a good marriage for this podcast, because I definitely come from the biological point of view. And 10 years ago, I guess it was 2008. Yeah, so about 10, 11 years ago, I was studying epigenetics as one of the courses in at UCLA, where I was getting my degree in psychology. And first of all, your book would have been a more interesting intro to epigenetics than the course that I was taking. Although, the field was really exciting, even 10, 11 years ago. It was a really cool concept. I unfortunately didn't get exposed to your book until this year, at the end of last year. So I wish that would have happened way earlier.
It shows up when we need it.
It does. Everything does that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I have some questions that I want to ask in particular, but probably more than anything, I want to introduce our listeners to a lot of the concepts that you talked about, and also because my wife Sophie and I kind of meet in the middle, with her being raised around the concept of spirituality, but also holistic medicine and all of those, kind of Eastern philosophies that I had no exposure to. My dad was a physician. My sister's now a physician. I was to be a physician in training, and so none of that existed in my life. And so I'm really interested in seeing how some of the concepts and questions that I have, how we end up conversing about them.
Well, it's kind of interesting because it's the exact parallel with my partner, Margaret, who, we're partners at every level of this. And I met her now, 20-some years ago. I came from totally the scientific thing, all about membranes and all that stuff that you read there and all that.
Yep.
Margaret and her former husband had a big program company here in the States, in California, called Summit, which was a workshop training program for people, very big time. And so she came from that background of the workshop and all that stuff. And I came from the science background, but when they came together, they just integrated so perfectly.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from her about that field of study, like your partner came from this different background. And it was like to incorporate the two together was really the resolution that led to writing the book, The Honeymoon Effect, because it was basically saying, wait a minute, if we take this knowledge and put it together, then we could have heaven on earth as a way of life. And God, that's just been the way it is. I'm still celebrating honeymoon with Margaret now for 20 plus years. And that's because both of us went through reprogramming, any of the conflicting kinds of beliefs to eliminate the conflict that could rise in almost any relationship just because of background programming. So as you're aware, and as we are aware, it's like, wow, that's a whole better life on this planet than before putting this all together.
Absolutely. And I think, you bring up a couple of really important concepts, which is it's about the meeting place of the two versus even the competition to me between the two, because I don't know that it's easy to really find the distinction between where the biology starts and the environmental influence ends, right? The marriage, if you will, is so tightly woven that certainly by the time we're adults having the experiences that we're analyzing, the ship has long ago sailed in terms of being able to pinpoint a specific moment that created even an epigenetic shift in the expression of our genes.
Well, you can't. I mean, if you go back and look at the programming started in the last trimester of pregnancy.
Right.
I mean, And consciousness as a vibrational EEG level of alpha is not a predominant state until after 7. Then you have to recognize, well, all the programming that occurred beforehand was not necessarily in any level of consciousness. So if what program did you get when you were 0? 1.
Yeah.
I don't know what to, well, we do know because your life is a printout of these programs. So we can get back to it that way. But you cannot have a recall to say, oh, yeah, I got this program. It's like, you have no idea what the hell the program was. It was in there before your consciousness even kicked in. Brain didn't even work in consciousness at that level.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, here's Sophie. Sophie, meet Bruce.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Sophie. I'm so glad you're going to join us. That's good. Partnership makes everything work just right. So thank you for being here. Yes.
Yay, we're excited.
So am I.
Dr. Lipton was just telling me about
Bruce.
Sorry. Bruce was just telling me about the Honeymoon Effect book that I read about. I haven't read that book yet, but maybe that would be a good pickup for us together, kind of putting in place. So that came before the biology of belief, right?
Nope. That came years after the biology of belief. Biology of belief got me in a position to have a relationship, and going from very, very poor relationship material to being in a honeymoon that is extended over 20 years, and waking up every day in honeymoon is like, wow, that was a consequence of learning biology of belief.
All right. Well, I just got a new angle of how this interview is going to go. Because let me tell you a little bit about what we do. What we do is, so the Ignited podcast in general was created for our relationship. So Sophie and I have had early, I'll call it relationship trauma, but struggles in our relationship. We did a lot of work and a lot of bringing together of two different worlds, as you talked about, that it seems like you and your partner had done it, the work around as well. And then when we came out on the other side, we were in this weirdly enviable position for people who had been through the struggles, where there were not a lot of examples out there of individuals who had made it out.
Yes.
Infidelity and real relationship struggles. And so all of a sudden Sophie started finding herself playing a mentor to other women who had struggled but hadn't found hope. And so that's when we decided to do the podcast. Sophie had written a few articles about the experience, and then we decided to do a podcast together to share that. And so that's the Ignited podcast itself came out of relationship, and that's our main focus still. Yeah.
Let me just put this in. There's Uplift is I think it's uplift.org. There's a lecture where Margaret and I gave a lecture at an Uplift Festival program. And it's kind of fun for me because I always get up there and talk about this stuff, but this is an opportunity where Margaret came up and had her opportunity to present it, after I talked about the science part. And I was so excited because that's the first time we ever did anything like that. But I was so excited because I saw all the people in the room, and especially the women, when she was talking, were like going, whoa, like this. And they were so into what she was talking about and the way she presented. It was so beautiful. And I also enjoyed it because when the talk was over, usually everyone crowds around me and I have to deal with all that. And they were crowding around Margaret, and it was like, oh, wow, this is really great. Stay over there. Margaret's got a lot to say. And it was kind of a wonderful experience. But that was a presentation of the kind of stuff that you guys are talking about. And we did this as a co-presentation. I really thought it was a good presentation on the honeymoon effect. It was in Uplift sometime back, a few years ago. But it's a wonderful video. Wonderful for me, not because of what I presented, but wonderful because of Margaret's direct contribution to the audience at that time.
That's great.
Priceless.
So I'll be honest, normally I do a little intro and we tell everybody welcome to the conversation piece. But first of all, we're so deep in conversation at this point that I'd rather just keep going if it's okay.
I'm a happy camper, whatever way you would love to do it. I'm happy to be here with you And I also am very happy that we have an opportunity to present this to the followers that you have, because it gets the message out.
100%. And so I'll say this. I was told about your book at a conference, and I was told about it actually, and we can maybe get back to this somehow, but I was told about it as an intro to somebody this person was a Psych K practitioner, and so they wanted me to learn about the concepts behind. I'm okay coming back to Psych K at some point and talking a little bit about that, but I would much rather talk about the knowledge and the information and the experience that you had with Margaret after, but also leading up to, the writing of this book and moving from such a purely physical science way of thinking and being. I mean, you are a biologist. Like a cell biologist is probably as close to bench work where you are constantly focused on the mechanisms of our world, right? The biological mechanisms of the world.
And a happy student, to tell you the truth, because the things that I talk about now, they were shown to me by the cells I was studying. So all of a sudden it's like, wow, just observing how they were controlling and expressing their lives was the foundation of the same thing that we have to know. So the cells are an intelligent precursor to us.
Yeah. And you talk about that a lot in the book, and I don't want to get into all the details in the book because people should read the book for that. But here's one of the pieces that I got literally within the first couple of pages, and it speaks so much to the work that we do, I believe. In the work that I do, I work a lot with people with addiction struggles, and that'll come back in here at some point.
Yes.
But you talk about feeling stuck and being resolved to pain, and just thinking to yourself before you left the University of Wisconsin Medical School, just thinking to yourself, well, I guess this is the reality I'm going to be in for the rest of my life. And just sort of being resigned and accepting of it. Now, you go through an entire journey in the book as to how that did not end up proving to be so. You ended up not at all stuck in that same way of being. And so much of the book is about how it was about leaving the anchor behind. It was about deprogramming yourself from the belief that you were going to be stuck, which then allowed the biology of your body to then follow suit and lead you into a life that you're actually incredibly happy and content with. And I'd like to talk about that.
Yes, me too. I'd love to talk about that because I have two lives on this planet, the pre-awareness life and the post-awareness life. And that's like so radically different from each other. And the resolution of the post-awareness part is like, wow, once this happened, let's put it this way. Prior life one, I was out searching, trying to grab things and bring them into my life. Second life, after all this awareness, I just stand here at the doorway and it all comes to me. And that's like, wow, what a hell of a difference between struggle existence and then the joy of fulfilling and manifesting without even the sweat or effort in that level once we change this consciousness.
And as I was saying before we went on, that's where I think, Sophie, I wanted you in on this conversation because you live that way. And we literally talk it pretty much in the exact same way, Bruce, that you had just expressed it, of just letting things, letting experiences, letting resources, people come into your life without forcing it, without living in the anxiety of whether or not it will exist. Can you talk to that a little bit, Soph?
Yeah, I feel like the less that I try and manhandle or control or obsess over the things that I want or don't have, just the easier energetically it comes to me. And it's sounds so much easier than it is. And then it really is that easy once you get into the practice, but getting there is hard because it's a leap of faith. And I think that's hard for people to wrap their head around is, how do I know? How do I know that things will come to me easily? And it's just a matter of trusting that you are worthy of a beautiful life just by existing. And then after you have that trust, then you can do the work to kind of get there. Yeah,
well, it's kind of interesting because when I first came across the insights that we're going to be talking about, that we are talking about, I was just learning in my conscious mind from my research and my studies in my conscious mind. And what I saw was, oh my God, if you understand the science, so it's not just so much a belief issue, it's like there's a science here. If you understand the science, you could create this most fabulous life. So early on in the game, when I understood this at the conscious level, the mechanism and everything, I thought, wow, I got to tell people. So I gathered some people together and I say, let me tell you about this understanding, because if you understand this, you can have this most fabulous life. And as I start talking, they would go, you know, Lipton, your life doesn't look that good for a guy who says you know this stuff. And it was a moment, it was like the slap in the face. Thanks, I needed that. Because what I recognize, I'm talking the talk, but I am not even walking the talk, so it's irrelevant. If you can put all this beautiful consciousness in your head, but if you don't make it part of your life, then it's nice, but it doesn't have any influence at all. And so that led me to say, wait, no more talking about this unless you go out there and do it. And I thought, oh my God, what happens if it doesn't work? I have nothing to talk about. Now I'm out of the job and everything, you know. But the beautiful part about that is the universe just fed me right back, virtually instantaneously. The moment I changed the perception, the world changed. And it was like, that was the beginning of a trip that once you see it the first time, once you realize you actively made this difference right now, it is so pulls you to like, what else? Let's change other things, and cleaning up the things that were interference to the destination that we all seek.
I love that. Literally, the next sentence on my little notes was the power of perspective, and so you led me right into it. It's probably, Soph, one of the most common conversations you and I have about, you know, when I'm stuck. One of the things that is probably true is I'm looking at it from a stuck perspective. I'm making myself limited in the view that I have of the problem. And I love what you just said about, if I'm going to walk the walk, then the talk will then follow, and people will be able to be inspired and connect subconsciously to my talk because they'll see it manifesting. Yeah. And that is a process. I'd love to know, you said that you were able to shift.
Yes.
What allowed you to go from talk to walk?
Well, the point that first says, if this is true, then how come you're having problems here if you already know all this information? That led me to the fact that, oh my God, when we say the mind, and the mind, I go, well, first of all, there are two minds. And they both have different functions and they learn in different ways. And until you figure this out, everything else seems to be a total mystery. So there's the conscious mind, which is connected to your personal identity, your spirituality, your uniqueness. That's you. And there's a subconscious mind, which is about 90% of the brain, which is a habit mind. It just plays programs. And so one is creative and the other is habitual. And the idea is this: if we're running from the creative mind, then by definition, we should be creating our world. If we're running by the habit mind, then we're just going to play the programs over and over and over again. So now, two pieces of data that are critical. Number one, science has recognized that when we think, or our conscious minds engage in thinking, it's an inside job. If I asked you both right now, I say, tell me what you're doing on Sunday. Right now, if you answer that question, it's not written in front of you anywhere. I say, then you're going to give me an answer. Where the heck did your answer come from? Oh, I had to think about an answer. So I go, oh, so you took your conscious mind that is looking out, turned it around and went inside and goes, what am I doing on Sunday? I said, well, what if you're driving the car? And we just had this same discussion, and your conscious mind just went inside to think. You're driving the car, the conscious mind's not watching anymore. I said, well, does that mean you crashed your car? I go, no. The subconscious mind, habit mind, is autopilot. Conscious is the pilot, subconscious autopilot. When the conscious mind is thinking, the autopilot steps in and it plays programs. It knows how to drive a car, knows how to do your job, it knows how to walk, it knows these things because it's habit. So you can let go of the control. Conscious mind can think, and the moment it's thinking, then control, autopilot steps in, runs the program according to whatever program is in the subconscious mind. Fine. Point. 95% of the day, the life is coming from subconscious program. And I say, because we think 95% of the day, therefore we give up to the autopilot. And I say, well, what's the consequence? And the structure of life is like, oh my God, it really pivots on just this one point. It says, when I am thinking, my creative conscious mind, creative meaning wishes and desires, if I ask you what you want out of your life, that's a creation. It comes from conscious mind, so your wishes and desires are conscious mind. And I say, yeah, but if your conscious mind lets go because it's going inside to think, and then you start playing the subconscious, I say, where did those programs come from? And that's where we start to recognize the child is programmed from the last trimester of pregnancy through the first 7 years, because the brain of a child, when you put wires on a person's head and you read EEG, electroencephalograph, their vibration levels, right now what we're talking at is a higher vibration called beta. It's focused consciousness. When you start to relax and calm down, the vibration slows down. That's called alpha. That's calm consciousness. But the moment you start to fall asleep, consciousness is like the switch is off, but the brain is still vibrating at a lower vibration. That's called theta. And theta is hypnosis. It's also imagination. That's why a child's brain is in theta primarily as the activity between last trimester of pregnancy and age 7. I go, why is it in theta? And the answer is, simple point. We get a brand new computer. It's got an operating system. I turn on the computer. I say, fine, it's operating. I say, do something. I say, oh, wait, I can't do anything. I don't have any programs in here. I got a computer, but I don't have any programs how to write, draw, Excel, whatever it is. I say, oh, you have to put the programs in. Then you can use the computer. A child, when it's born, the brain is the computer. But in order for it to function, it's a blank computer. It needs some programs. So nature gives 7 years to download programs. And I say, how? Well, if the brain is in theta for that 7-year period as predominant activity, that's hypnosis. So I say, what does it mean? I said, you just watch your parents, your mother, your father, your siblings, your community. You observe them like a video recorder. It's exactly what it is. It's a video recorder. Downloading, but conscious activity didn't start yet. So you're downloading, bypassing consciousness, not even there, straight into subconscious. So you're downloading programs into the machine. So when you become 7 and you start to operate from consciousness, you've got some abilities. Okay? So I go, well, so what's the issue? I say, well, great. The programs come in before age 7. They're downloaded by observing parents or siblings or community. So are they your programs? No. You're observing other people's programs. And if they have a defect in their program, guess what? You just downloaded that in your life too. So basically, when the subconscious is running the show, it has pre-programs in there that we got from other people. When consciousness is running the show, then consciousness puts its hands on the wheel and drives towards wishes and desires. When consciousness is thinking, autopilot, subconscious kicks in and plays the program. The same story I've told 30 years in lectures, and I will continue because there's no better story to explain just what happened right there, and that is this. You have a friend, you know your friend's behavior very, very well, and you know your friend's parent. And one day you see your friend has the exact same behavior as their parent, so you feel obliged to say to your friend, hey, Bill, you're just like your dad, and back away from Bill. Because immediately Bill's going to go, how can you compare me to my dad? I'm nothing like my dad. And I say, this is the most profound story. That's why I've been saying it for 30 years. I say, what is it? I say, everyone else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who doesn't see it is Bill. I say, oh, well, the reason is biologically now simple. Bill got the program in his first 7 years by observing his dad, downloaded that behavior. Fine. But Bill can use his creative mind. He doesn't have to fall into the program at all. But Bill thinks 95% of the day, like every one of us. So when Bill is thinking, guess what? The auto program, autopilot kicks in. He's playing his dad's behavior. But now here's the problem. Bill's the only one that's not observing it because Bill's inside thinking. He's not looking out. So whatever programs are coming out, 95% of the day, we, Bill, don't observe it. And if those programs are good, great. And if those programs are negative, that means 95% of the day you could be sabotaging yourself, and you are the only one who would never see it. That leads to a very severe problem. It leads to the problem of victimization. I want to be successful. I want to have a great relationship. I want to be healthy. I want a good job. I say that's conscious creative wishes. Then you go through your life. None of it happens. And you don't see why. All you see is none of it happens. And then you have to go in your head and go, wow, I wanted to be successful. It's not working. The universe is against me. I am a victim. Why? I want to be successful. It's not happening. It's got to be the universe. Mm-hmm. And then I put the story of Bill in there and said, guess what? Universe never was against you being happy. It was 95% of the day you've been playing programs that are self-sabotaging, disempowering, and limiting. And that's 70% of the programs the average person gets from downloading family and community behavior. So then basically it says, we all perceive ourselves to be victims, but the problem is this: we're victims not because the universe is against us. We're more or less victims because we can't see we are sabotaging our own behavior.
So I have a question then. What would you say about, so we have a 6 and 8-year-old boys.
Yes.
Our 8-year-old, I would say, is pretty much a replica of his parents, like follows our behavior. He's a lot like dad. He's a lot like mom, sensitive, loving, quiet, very cerebral. And then we have child 2, Leo. He's not like us in a lot of ways. He's not like, there are parts of us, but parts of us that we haven't been showing. It's not like the negative or self-sabotaging or other ways of describing him, more bully-like. These behaviors we don't display very often. And that's what he's showing most prominently. And we don't know where it's coming from. And he's not exposed to very much media. It's coming from somewhere, but where is it coming from? He's 6.5. And honestly, we're beside ourselves. We don't know what to do. We are trying all the things, and it's a way of acting out and attention seeking. He's not like that when it's just you and him one-on-one. It's the minute that others come around.
Yeah.
Where does it come from?
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to say there's at least a couple of sources here, and one of them you can be involved with, and the other one, well, you can be involved with all of them, but you didn't necessarily bring it in. Okay. Number one is this. If you understand the biology that we've been talking about, then the idea is your identity is not even in here. It's a broadcast in the field picked up by your cells. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when somebody comes into a life, they didn't come in blank slate. They came in, they already had programs when they were here. Yeah. And in fact, it's very interesting because if you talk to a child at the time where they can become verbal, 2, 3, right in where they can start to talk to you, and you ask that youngest of children, you say, where were you before you were here? And the answer is surprising because most of them can say they were somewhere before they were here. And I say, well, was it relevant? Because we didn't come in blank. We came in with programs and beliefs and issues. Now, and then you say, so why did we bring them in? The answer is to resolve the vibrations, because thought is a vibration. Harmony is a nice like sine wave. Noise is choppy, choppy, choppy. So if I had a noisy last life, I want to come into this life to do what? I want to bring some harmony into it, or whatever it is I needed to learn from the previous one. So part one, behaviors that show up didn't necessarily show up from this particular life, because we're all carrying with us a history. So that automatically, and this especially relates to autism, because a lot of it is environmental. But some of it is not environmental. People came from the right, perfect place and everything, but they came in with it. Mm-hmm. So I can't say, the parents were bad. I said, they came in with it. So let's understand that. But then the other part is this. They also download. And because, as both of you know, there's also 95% of your behavior that is still coming from subconscious, maybe things that you didn't change yet. But that child picked up on it. Why? Because they're watching 100% of you.
Totally.
You're seeing 5% of you. They're watching 100% of you. Yeah. So there's this invisible stuff that you didn't even know you did. I always love it because when my daughter first used a swear word, obviously I know where she got it. But what was most interesting about it, she didn't use it randomly as a word. I'm just making a sentence up, stick a swear word in it. She used it with absolute meaning, intention, and body posture. Okay? The whole idea was, so she didn't download just the word when I said it. She downloaded my whole meaning of the word and its effectiveness. And the point about that was, well, I didn't say that all the time, but yeah, sure as heck didn't take many times for that to be downloaded. And so there are our own invisible ones. So now I'm saying we have at least two sources. A, there's a history before we got here. And B, the child records 100% of the time where we're only observing 5% of the time. Mm-hmm. So that's where invisible stuff comes in.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. That was really, really great. And then also there's the piece about, because you talk a lot in the book, obviously, about epigenetics and the idea of regulation of our biology by the environment and by the exposure. Yes. And that is generational. So, I love the conversations you had because I've had it with other people, but until I read this book, I never had somebody lay it out in such a clear way, the Darwinian Lamarckian sort of paradox, right? Where for decades and decades, people sort of laughed at the concept that your experience in this generation, in this life, would somehow be transmitted to the next generation because, as Darwin told us, it was very clear. Your genetic blueprint was the only thing that mattered that got transmitted. Yeah. Next thing we find out, and Sophie and I had this joke. We met in a neuroscience class at UCLA, and it was always this joke that whenever there were 2 or 3 concepts that were seen to be at war with one another around which is correct in any area, in social psychology, in neuroscience, and abnormal psychology, every time the teacher or the professor would start talking about it, we'd look at each other and go, I'm going to foreshadow where this is going in about 3 lectures and say, after a lot of research, we found out there's actually a bit of all of them in it, and it's not one or the other. And it almost always proved itself to be true, where people try to pick a specific bucket or one specific, silver bullet explanation for everything. And inevitably you find out that hardly ever holds true.
Oh, absolutely true. And it's very interesting because let's bring up a concept called resilient children. Resilient children come from the worst background you could ever imagine, that most of their siblings end up in jail or in poverty and all these things. And then some of them just come right out of the worst environment in the world and manifest something profoundly important. And I go, well, how do you explain that from, the stuff that we just talked about? Where did that come from? And it turns out a child has an opportunity to pick different teachers. And so that in the worst situation, if they pick up a Bible and they start to read about Jesus or something and they say, oh, he's so cool and all that kind of stuff like that, that could be the mentor for that child, not the parents. Yeah. And all of a sudden, they say, oh, well, now that child's going to live in a totally different frame of reference than the other kids that are just going to play what the parents played. So then that brings in an invisible part. Who was the teacher that was chosen to be the teacher for that individual?
The one that translates the message most easily, you're saying?
Or the one that's accepted by that child as the message that they feel was the one that resonated with them better than the one that, let's say, the parents gave. And I say, well, that's an issue because then all of a sudden you have a child and you go, well, it's not like the parents. Where did that come from? It's because it depends on who or what. I mean, it doesn't have to be a person. It could be a philosophy they pick up.
I think with us right now, we're just in this constant, kind of hitting our head against the wall, but still allowing that hitting of the wall to expand our minds. And we're very open. We're both, Adi has a PhD in psychology. I was a psychology major. I'm a yoga instructor. I've practiced mindfulness since I got out of the womb. We're just trying to figure it out. And we're both we don't know. And we're open to figuring it out. And, we're going off our instincts. We know he has a lot of energy. And he needs to channel the energy. He's very artistic. So now his teacher, when he's wound up, will take him and let him color for an hour or two because he knows that that's a way to channel it in a healthy way. You know, physically, we're putting him in 4 days of, you know, a martial arts for jiu-jitsu. That's where he is right now. And he has physical energy needing to be channeled. That's
absolutely.
It's just different than we all are made up differently. And he has extra energy than the rest of us at the end of the day. He's wound up.
Yeah, so basically what you're doing is the best thing. You're giving options for a way of life. And the other idea is is really it's repetition of what goes on in his life that will shape him. It's anything he practices. So any kind of practice, such as the Tai Chi, these are really good things because they're going to have to give him a pattern that he's going to have to start to focus on.
Exactly.
And conflict is unfortunate because that's when conventional parents get mad at the kid and then start to get angry. And now everything is coming into the head is, well, I'm not good enough. I'm a bad child and all that. And I said, well, that's a program. and that manifests just as much as if I told the child he was a good child, but it just goes in the opposite direction.
Sure.
So the idea is if we knew we were doing programming, then what we do is set up a situation where this programming is in a positive light. So yes, going to do the Tai Chi, doing the artwork is very, very critical. In fact, one of the people that we know has created a wonderful program for kids to draw, scribble, whatever it is, and it's the movement of the hands and the consciousness that allow a child to become much more expressive. And so art is a release. Now, that's what art is. What you put on the page is not there until your mind puts something on the page.
Exactly.
And therefore, what's on the page is a reflection of mind. And what you put in your hands to put on the page is a reflection of that as well. So your work is very important to this regard. Redirecting the outlets instead of anger, punishment, whatever it is, because they work in the complete opposite direction.
Yeah.
Because what you're now programming is your child is irreparable.
Yep.
It's like, I'm not good. Listen, my parents have been telling me that for days now.
It's funny because our programming from our parents is to punish and so it's like we need to do our own detox first because we know that we need to channel his energy into good, but then we're also still punishing. So it's kind of defeating the whole purpose.
Yeah, it's not easy. Geez, I wish it was all here. Take this pill and everybody's going to be happy. But no, it's a work issue, and it's a work issue not just with the child. It's a work issue with the parents.
100%.
Because parents are the model, and
I think
the invisible behavior is where we get screwed up because you don't see you're doing the invisible behavior, but the child does.
It's funny because I feel like I can feel as we're doing the punishment side that it's against what I want to be doing. But I don't know what the better alternative is because all I've ever known is when you do something wrong, you get punished. Like I would get grounded and that's just what would happen. Or I'd go sit in my room. And so we've tried to create other things, but I think, you don't become a parent and then you get a manual. No one helps you with how to parent. So the things that definitely feel wrong in your body, when you were a kid, you don't replicate those things. But the things that were kind of like, it's fine, whatever, we just punish and put in time out, you kind of continue that because no one ever helps you.
Well, I think part of what Bruce is saying is, and it's interesting because Leo, the kid we're talking about, is 6.5, going on 7. So, and it's funny, I've done neurofeedback and biofeedback, so I'm completely aligned with the frequency ranges you were talking about before and everything. But Leo is not yet very conscious of what he's doing. He's acting based on the patterns he sees. And so he's not even quite at the place where that higher conscious mind is able to even control any of the habits because it's almost like it's not really because he has some autonomy over this, but it's almost like he's just replaying habits.
He is, but it's also important because he's still in that mode. Then it's still making new habits is where you are right now.
Absolutely,
because he's still in that mode. So once he gets beyond that mode, then it's a different way of putting in a program. But if he's still putting in programs now, this is the best time to put in the program. But then the idea is to redirect the energy into a positive activity rather than go sit in the corner and wait. That's not positive. That just makes him feel worse because inside he's like, I'm not good enough. And that a program is going to affect him the rest of his life, because when he's going to try to be good, the subconscious program will just cancel that process. So here's the opportunity of what is it, something that is positive that you can do now. And these are very interesting things. It's like, the tendency, of course, has always been, I grew up in the same kind of, family, like, tell me the truth and we won't get mad. And then you tell them the truth and you get hit. And it's like, that doesn't work. That's not working. But the idea is what? There are other ways of doing this. So then, when kids get together and one of them is not acting up, is acting up, then they put them like in the center of a group, and then everyone says how wonderful the positive sides of this. You're the positive kid, redirecting them to go, no, you're a positive kid, and not emphasizing the negative, because when you emphasize the negative, that's a program itself.
True.
Where we really see this come to fruition, and I'd love to turn around a little bit and talk about, it's Margaret, right?
Margaret, my wonderful partner, yes.
Yeah, and how learning this in your own life and what brought the Biology of Belief book allowed you to enter a different life that allowed Margaret into yours. So I work a lot with people with addiction and mental health struggles and people who are looking to transform. And then together, Sophie and I work a lot with couples. And inevitably you hear people say, absolutely, especially with the way we conceptualize addiction in the field right now, people talk about, I have the addictive gene, which is a misnomer. There is no addictive gene. It literally, even if it actually literally doesn't exist. But then we even get it with couples where, people just say, well, that's just the way I am, or that's how I've always been. And it becomes this kind of throwaway excuse to say, I can't change. This is who my machine has created me to be. And one of the things that I would love for you to talk about, because we mentioned it a little bit before we went live, is once you discovered this and you knew that you could change the programming, what were some of the things that you did in your life to open up? Because you said, I realized I had to think less and act through my creative mind more. So I'd like to I think our readers, apparently they're reading this, our listeners guarantee are listening right now going, okay, well, how do I got this programming, how do I change it? What were some of the practices that you put into your life that allowed you to start letting yourself embody this and then enter in a relationship like you have now with Margaret?
I'll tell you, the first wake-up call that I had, really the one that just blew my mind because I realized it, was when I started to recognize that, and it was at a stoplight. My car pulls up to the stoplight, and it's a long light, and I'm sitting there, holding onto the wheel, and what's going on in my mind? It's like, well, I'm not going to get to the destination on time, and there's going to be a problem here, and this isn't going to work. And all of a sudden, as a third party, I'm listening to this conversation with myself going, wow, that's not right. Nothing's positive in this. You're creating a whole negative future that hasn't unfolded yet, because you're anticipating this is the way it always is. Like somebody said, that's the way I always am. Well, this is the way it always is. And I sat there and I thought, my God, I am manifesting a vision that I don't want. And I didn't hear it because it just runs through all the time. You're just walking down the street. There's things going on. The moment you pay attention is like, whoa, a lot of that's not very positive, is it? And that was the first thing to start to say, oh my God, I am having dialogues that when I stop as a third party, not be involved in it, stop as a third party and observe it, recognize this isn't right. That's you know what I did immediately after that and changed my whole life is I put masking tape over the clock on the car, because it was always beating the clock to get to some place, and I'm not going to get there. I was like, and then I wasn't. Guess what? Put the tape on the clock. I get there all the time at the right time. Even if I'm late, other people were late. If I'm early, I'm at the right time. It was like I stopped projecting what was going to happen from previous experiences that were going on.
I love that example.
And it worked, and it was so exciting. Of course, this is the whole idea. When something works, it's like, let's do the next one whenever I could. And the next one was interesting because now I'm starting to realize I am creating these things, and we have programs. And I remember I was in my office at the university, and a faculty member came in and said to me, Bruce, don't forget we have a faculty party, quote, party, on Saturday. And it's like, all I remember is those are the most boring things I've ever done. And nobody talks to each other, and you sit around and stand around, and the hour just goes, so I want to get out of here. And you do it. Why? Because it's a faculty party. You're the faculty, responsibility. And we always, and at one point I just thought, no, I just said to the person, I said, taking power. I said, no, I have, unfortunately I have these other plans I have to attend to, and I won't be able to make it. And it was like, sorry, and I go, and he walked out of the office, and I was like, oh my God, I have Saturday for myself. I don't have to do this. And it was just joy of what? Finally saying what I wanted to say and stop doing, the responsible thing is to go to the faculty meeting. It's like, oh man, that's a bunch of BS, which means belief system, that I had to do this. I didn't have to do that. That was because of a program. And the more you start to see, what are the things you do because you think you have to do it, and realize, but that was a choice.
This is 100%
such a big concept we talk to people about.
This is like everything to me, is this idea of social norms and thinking that we have to do things and be places. I mean, I could be like all over the place. I'm so lucky to be invited to beautiful events all the time due to my social media career and, my wellness career and being in the heart of Los Angeles. There are always amazing things going on with beautiful, brunches, with beautiful socialites that are there, and photographers, and the most amazing, luxurious experiences. And they're all like that. And I know that, to me, it's about asking myself, today in this moment, is this going to deplete me or fill my cup up? And any given day, that could change. Like, I may want to go to a brunch and schmooze and connect with people and get my photo taken, and that may fill me up to be social and connected. Oftentimes, it's not, because I have 3 children and I'm depleted, and what would nurture my soul is to stay home in my pajamas and watch Netflix. That's what's going to nurture my soul and nourish my soul. And tuning into that rhythm, and not out of a guilt place, not out of a should place. What is going to fill me up and allow me to give more fully to myself and to my family, which is all that matters to me. If I'm depleted, everyone in the family feels it. So how can I fill myself up and really be honest with myself? And the only difference in the way that you kind of behaved in the way that I am now is that instead of making up an excuse, I'm just honest now. I'm just, in the most intentional way, I wish I could be there. It's just not going to work for me today. I am really tapped out. I so appreciate the invite. Is there anything I can do to support you? I see you're launching this new product. Can I share that for you? How can I give back and give them a little of what they're needing without it taking from me? Absolutely.
And this is very interesting because I've been saying this as of late, and it's something that I learned real early in the game, and it involves this. I'm being confronted with, I have to make a decision, whether it's to go to the party, whether it's to do the job, or I don't care what it is. I have to make a decision. I said, well, how do you make a decision? I go, well, the first thing is this. We go through a conscious review. What would be the consequences of all this stuff, okay? Just to give an analogy, in algebra class, which was, most of us had in high school at some level, part of the job was you get a very big equation, and your job is to reduce the equation to the smallest size, if you remember something like that. Mm-hmm. I go, so this is relevant to insight. And I said, well, how'd you do it? I said, well, you did it step by step by step. You said, oh, I'll do this. Then I get the new equation. Then I do another step and I get another equation. And at the bottom of the page, I've reduced it to the smallest one. Point. Any error in one of those decisions, the smallest error, even move the decimal point over one stupid place, the bottom line is incorrect.
Yeah.
Okay? So now I'm going to say most people, like we just talking about, are faced with a decision, I have to do X. So I'm going to think about it. Well, what's the positive, or where am I going to go with this stuff? Okay, and how am I going to resolve all this? And I say, well, everything's great, but if you make one of the decisions based on a belief that is not correct, an incorrect assumption, then your answer at the bottom is not necessarily correct anymore. So here's the second part. You can do the rational part, which I think is good because it gives you, an understanding at some level. But here's the conclusion. My final decision is not made with consciousness. My final decision is made with heart. The heart doesn't do step by step by step. It doesn't care about that. The heart reads energy. And it says, if I do this, do I add energy to my system or do I lose energy? That's all it says. Good vibes, bad vibes. That's all it is. Or no vibe, which means it's irrelevant if you do it or not, or it's not relevant. So you got three things. Do it, don't do it, or do it, but it's not relevant. Okay? I say, I can do all the conscious processing and give all the ratings of why I should or shouldn't do this and then come to a conclusion. But then I say, fine, forget that because one error in that conclusion is wrong anyway. I say the final thing is this: before you make that decision, check in. Just check in with your heart and say, how do you feel about this? Don't give me the details. How do you feel? Yep. And I say, follow the feeling, because the feeling is reading energy.
Yep.
And that's an accurate reading.
Yep. Consciousness
is reading learned experiences and beliefs and all that. And hey, we have misperceptions. And if you use one of those, then the answer is not going to be necessarily correct. So
I love that.
A really interesting way to make that decision is, I can do all the thinking. That's really good. Not saying don't do it. But at the very end, it's really, how do I feel about this?
And I love that because it sandwiches really nicely with where I've been in the same kind of mission, which is setting an intention before any event. So say that you go to the thing and you're hoping that it'll be X, Y, and Z. It'll fill up your cup. It'll give you good energy. Setting an intention before walking in the space, even if it's drinks with my husband and we're going to happy hour for 45 minutes or an hour, if I set the intention to feel connected, to open up, to feel like I'm sharing something from my heart, to connect to his heart, if I set that intention 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10, it'll go that way. And then on top of it, if I sandwich it with your concept of being more conscious afterwards, it's like a complete conscious decision filled with so much intention. You're not letting the world take you. You're in the driver's seat. You're the one that's deciding, what am I getting out of this experience? Because everything's just an experience. It's one experience to the next. And if we're in autopilot all the time, then it's just the same as any other day. But if you experience each experience, however small, as a new experience, then every day is a new day and you can be that much more in the moment and you can get so much more from it.
Absolutely. You can change your life right now. If you just wanted to, that's a reality. You can do this. And so it is incumbent recognizing that we are creating this life experience. Now, while that sounds like so new agey at this moment, let's just step back and say something factual. And that is this: the most valid science on planet Earth is the science of quantum physics. There is no science that has been tested more or verified more to be truthful than that science. And so I can put all the other sciences and stack them up, but I'm going to say the top science is quantum physics for truth. And then I say, and I say, because the primary principle of quantum physics is consciousness is creating our life experience. And all of a sudden, that's not new age anymore. That's a fact of science. So, Sophie, as you were talking about, what if I put out this consciousness? I go, well, then that's part of creating your life experience. And I say, physically, that is total alignment with the most valid science of all. And then biologically, that's where my research, interestingly enough, coming from the back, because I didn't know the quantum physics when I did all this stuff. But what I found through epigenetics was consciousness is selecting my genetic activity and controlling my behavior and my health. It's like, well, biology and physics now say the exact same thing,
That's
and
so
that is
beautiful.
consciousness.
So can I dive into the science a tiny bit?
I hope so.
Because I'd love to dissect this a little bit. So in the book, and I think most people who are listening right now who've ever cared about genetics at all understand that it's, for the longest time, the way we understood it was a very small variability in all of our genes. I mean, all of our genes are coding what we understand. The things we can read are very, very similar to one another across all humans, right? That there are very small differences. And what you talk about in the book, and I'm doing the broadest overview possible, is the concept around epigenetics and the idea that environmental influence, both prenatally, pre-generationally, and your own experiences, affects the transmission of those genes, affects the expression of them. How will they actually show up?
Yes.
One of the clearest examples I always give to people is, the material at the tip of your finger has exactly the same genetics in it as your eye or your neuron in your brain. The only difference is what genes get expressed in terms of whether it will become a finger skin cell or a brain cell. And the same thing, in a more nuanced way, is happening epigenetically and constantly being affected by stress, relaxation, toxins, et cetera, in terms of what genes show up in your body. Now, as I was reading your book, I was taking notes, and to me, what I see when I hear that is there's a marriage of the environment you are born into and the experiences you have and everything we talked about with the kids and what they choose to pay attention to and all of that, and the biological code, right? They're integrated rather than separate from one another, because while it is true that, Bruce, your genes are slightly different than mine, our experience in life and our exposure to stress, et cetera, will turn on and off our own genes. So when it comes to disease, when it comes to mental health struggles, addiction, PTSD, I mean, you name it, from a behavioral and physiological point of view, your experience will then decide what part of the blueprint gets read and expressed. So it's not necessarily that the environment or your belief fully controls the expression of who you are, but rather that within the confines, within the range of what your genes can allow for, there's much, much more variability than we've ever given credit. And those experiences can create incredibly beautiful, meaningful, resilient existences, or incredibly limited, stressed out, and depressed or anxious existences.
This is 100% true, and the relevance about that is it's interesting because I've been talking about epigenetics for years, of course, since God, a long time ago. And the relevance about it is today, science is actually talking about epigenetics. I did my experiments in 1967 and 1990. The science was recognized, so I was 23 years ahead of what was going on. And here's the interesting part, because if you talk to conventional scientists today, they say, yes, environment is controlling your genes. And that is true. But what they won't take, or they haven't fully, but now I'm beginning to see it showing up because they're a little slow, but they're catching up, is there is an environment out here. And when it comes in through my system, it's going to get filtered by my perception of that environment. So two people sitting in the exact same place at the exact same time are going to look at the exact same world and have totally different experiences, not because the environment is different. Mm-hmm. It's because the interpretation of the environment is different.
Yes.
And interpretation is experience. So basically, if you just say, epigenetics is totally environment, I go, well, man, you're missing the big part, because my cells do not see the environment. My cells see what my nervous system tells them about the environment.
And
so I'm not getting direct environment in and out. Yeah. So then all of a sudden the interpretation gets in the way of the reading of the environment. And therefore, positive interpretation can lead to very positive results. Oh, guess what? It's called the placebo effect.
Yeah.
Placebo effect is, I'm going to take this pill because it's going to, the doctor told me it's the one, the newest, the greatest. It's even colored purple, so that makes it even better. That this is the one, and I take it, I get well, and then I find out it was a sugar pill. There's only one truth. The pill didn't heal you. It was your belief of this pill.
Yeah.
And everyone goes, yes, placebo effect. I go, yes, but you're not paying attention to the other side of the coin, the nocebo effect. I go, what's that? I go, well, positive thinking can heal me. Negative thinking is equally powerful, but works in the opposite direction. I can die from negative thinking. And all of a sudden I say, well, why is that important? Because everyone can tell you, yes, I know what the placebo effect is, but no one's going to say, well, what about the nocebo? What do you mean? What the heck is nocebo? I go, well, since you're spending most of your life on negative interpretations of perceptions, I think you should know about it because they're working with the same power as positive thinking, but in the opposite direction.
There are two parts of that what I love. So I did a TEDx talk and I talk about the Pygmalion effect, which is like the placebo effect, but for other people, right? What we see in other people, we make more likely will actually transpire. So it's sort of like self-fulfilling prophecies about others. And so absolutely, when we believe other people or when we believe we are smart and capable, we end up being more capable of solving problems, more capable of being resilient, just by that belief. I love in the book when you introduce nocebo and the placebo piece, you say something that, again, man, if I would have read the book when it first came out, it would have given me a 10-year head start on where I ended up. But it's beautiful to see the two things come together. Because for the longest time, I was wondering why everybody is fighting the placebo effect. I go, I don't understand. Like, if you know that an authority figure can instill a treatment, an intervention on something, and then the receiver, the patient, the individual who's struggling will feel better just because somebody they trust told them that this will make them feel better, this should be something we use. This should be something we run away from, right? Because the end goal is to make the experience for the person in front of us better. And to couple with that, we live in a world right now, if it bleeds, it leads. We live in a world that is just inundated with suffering. We are only the suffering is projected back onto us. Positive, good stories just don't get the ink time. They don't get the prime time. We don't hear them. And so that means in one part, the entire helping community has now avoided using something we know works, the placebo effect, to make us better. And then instead of that, in the guise of reality, they have inundated us with constant anxiety-provoking, stressful responses so that we are suffering more and being helped less. And that's just the world we live in now. Yeah.
Well, it's quite unfortunate because the put down of the placebo effect is really something that is being pursued by the pharmaceutical industry. For the idea is this, because when they test a new drug, they test it against a placebo, and if the drug doesn't do better than the placebo, then it's not sold. So what if you got rid of all the placebo people, and there was no real placebo effect, but the drug worked? Then we could sell the drug, and I don't care what placebo effect is. So the search for understanding placebo was not to enhance the placebo, but was to identify the mechanism to get rid of it so the drugs they can sell more drugs this way, okay? Yeah. So it's really, this is a very critical issue about how we see the world. Now, going back on the idea of what we focus on, let me try a connection I think is interesting, and that is this. Just consider this. If you're in traffic, and you're going down the street, and all of a sudden there's an accident down the street, even if it's on the other side of the road, all the cars on the other side of the road will slow down to gawk at the accident. And then I say, you know what? There could be a family having a picnic on the other side of the road. Mm-hmm. Totally irrelevant.
Yeah.
Why? I said, why are you so focused on this? So here's my suggestion. And it's based on this. Until a child finds out about mortality, there is no fear in the world. The idea that you have a life and then you end a life, when first learned, is trauma to a child. And it's interesting because the first trauma is not that the child thinks they're going to lose their life because they're not even acting in self-consciousness yet. They're observing the world and recognize, my mom and my dad who allow me to have my life, what if they die? And all of a sudden, so your fear of death first isn't even about your own death, because that doesn't show until around 7 when you realize, wait, I can die. And I say, so why is it relevant? In every biological system is something called the biological imperative. The imperative are drives of biological system that are not in consciousness. They're just drives. And the biological imperative is the drive to survive. So there's 2 levels of survival. As an individual, I need air, water, food, safety, shelter, all these things. So unconsciously, without a thinking process, the drive for survival is to take care of yourself, okay? And then I say, well, how do you do that? And I say, because once the subconscious is alerted to the threat, it will operate every day of your life. When you look at the world, you're not thinking about my safety. No, you don't have to think about it. It's automatic behavior. Because if something comes in that threatens your life, you will immediately be there to see it. And I go, well, how's that? Because it's operating 24/7 anyway. How much of our life is looking for the fear because of the fear I'm going to die? So anything related to fear, war, death, violence, and all that versus a picnic are going to come into your mind because you need this biological imperative stuff. It's to keep you alive. So you will look at the accident and go, whew, that's not me, but it's a scary damn thing that I'd be looking for. Got to be careful of this. But you won't care about the person on the picnic because that doesn't have any effect on your biological imperative. So the idea is this. News-wise, then it turns out to be exactly the same. You can give everybody the good news that life is beautiful, enjoy yourself, have a picnic, and everybody's having a good time, and nobody's going to read that article. But the one, well, there's more murders, there are more muggers, there's more disease, there's more this, now they're going to come into your mind. Why? Because 24/7, it's been looking for that anyway. Now you're just feeding it.
Yeah.
So this is the important part. And for me, it was real interesting because there was a point where when I recognized this, I can tell you the instant it changed my life instantly was I was not a spiritual person. I was a scientist. I was looking at genes and proteins and mechanism, and you live with the proteins and you die and then you're dust and blah, blah, blah. But once I understood the nature of how the cell membrane worked and that there were identity receptors that were receiving a signal of identity, which all of a sudden said, well, wait, my identity is not in here. My identity is a signal. That brought me to the reality is, well, my body and my identity are 2 separate things. That my identity is a broadcast, so I related to a television set. Here's the Bruce television playing the Bruce show. But the show is not built into the television set. The show is received by the television set. So I looked at that and I said, oh my God, my identity is here, whether my cell is here to read it or not. When the cell is here, I got the antennas, self-receptors, I'm going to read it. But if my cell is not here, then the broadcast is still here. That instant of, I can't die. I'm not even in here, was so profound. I remember tears coming down because it's like, oh my God, I'm a spiritual entity. I don't believe in spirituality. Now, so I'm going to put in quantum physics. I'm a field. And the field is continuous. And the point is, if another embryo shows up in the future with the same receptors that are on my cell, I'm back, but in a different TV set. Point. I can't die. I'm not in here.
There's nothing to be afraid of.
That instant of not being afraid, that instant, I felt this, tremendous emotion, of course, and all that, but I also felt this lightness. You know what the lightness was? Turn off the damn monitor that keeps looking for everything in the shadow that I can't see to make me sure that I will see it if it's going to threaten me. All of a sudden, it's like, no more using that. I didn't realize how much energy that uses in your unconscious mind, because every move you do, your subconscious mind is reading every signal in the environment it can read. And if anything is threatening, A, it's going to bring it to your attention. But B, even if it's not threatening, it's scanning everything in your environment continuously. I say, pull the plug on that. I say, what's the result? Wow, look at all this energy. I was using this energy, and now I don't care. Why? I'm not afraid anymore.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's the amount of freedom. It's just so beautiful. It's funny. Adi knows this because he's lived with me for 15 years. But I don't live a life of a lot of fear. Like I was born with just this innate safety, and I feel so grateful. And I hope that my children feel the same way and adopt that gene of just feeling so secure in knowing that everything's going to be okay. But unless I'm around someone else, I forget that that's like a superpower to not to have to harness that and create that, but instead it's innate within my being until I'm around someone else where I notice how much energy goes to those types of things. And it doesn't occur to me until I'm surrounded by it, and then it's reflecting back and I'm like, you spend so much. And I just went with a friend, a neighbor who has 4 children, and her life is consumed by fear. Everything's about, like, we stopped at the stop sign. She locked her doors. I don't lock my doors when it's in front of I do not lock my doors.
Sophie doesn't take the keys out of the car.
I don't take my keys out of the car. Like, I'm not afraid. If someone wants to take my car, they probably need it more than I do. Like, it's just such a different, literally within 1 block from our house, I noticed the differences. And I felt it in my body. I felt it in my bones, that fear, that anxiety. Her life is consumed by it.
It's the chemistry that is adjusting your biology, and the brain. I try to tell people, how does life work? I say it's like paint by numbers in reverse. Paint by numbers, you get a picture all carved up, and there's little numbers in every little section, and then you get a paint kit, and each paint has a number, and then when you put the paint number into the little space, you can then complete and get this beautiful picture, okay? And I go, but the mind works in a different way. It starts with the picture. And then the brain translates it into paint, chemistry, that complements the picture. And then the chemistry is released into the cells, which are like the pixels of my body. And I'm painting my body to be an exact complement to the picture. And that's where all of a sudden it says, like, the moment you put the picture of fear in, then the chemistry of fear is going to go in the body. And the moment you have love in your mind, the chemistry of love comes in your body. And guess what? The chemistry of love and the chemistry of fear are completely different and have completely different effects upon the behavior and the genetics of the cell.
Yeah, we're doing I'm running a 21-day habit reset challenge where we're helping people address challenges. And it's funny, we bring them in for the habit that they're trying to change. What are you trying to stop doing? And then I walk them through the neuroscience of learning a little bit. And then I walk them through, well, why do you want to change it? So they can really connect to the purpose. And then this week, this is the 3rd week, and we talk about beliefs. And I walk them through, look, you say you want to change this habit. And you've been saying it for a long time because you didn't reach me as the first stop. So we have to dig into what beliefs you have that you cannot change this habit, because without those beliefs lifted, without those beliefs altered, without changing the perspective that you have on the world, you are constantly feeding the machine that that this habit is necessary, needed, and that you will keep exploring it.
In fact, just to extend exactly what you were saying, is one of the biggest programs is the belief that it's hard and difficult to change.
Yeah.
Totally.
I said, well, if you already started with that belief, you've already thrown a monkey wrench in before we can even do the job. Because you're going to tell me this is going to be hard. And I'm saying, yeah, but what if it was easy?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna so quote you on that. Tomorrow we're doing another live, and I will quote you on that. That's so powerful. Look, I feel like I could continue this conversation for 3 hours. I already, in reaching out to your people, felt like at some point I want to do an interview that'll go live to our people for one of the change courses they do. Because I'll tell you, I read your book after going through neuroscience training and epigenetic and genetics training, et cetera. And so it was just almost like a reclaiming of what I've now learned in the 10, 12 years since, through living with Sophie, through having the experiences that I've had helping people, et cetera. And so to have the amazing, and we'll have a link to the book so that people can buy it and read it, because it's incredible work. And I want to thank you for putting it out. This is now the 2nd edition that I read. I read the 10th anniversary edition, so it even has added on notes in the decade since. since, science had progressed to catch up with a lot of the principles you wrote about earlier, we have 5 questions that we ask each one of our guests. And I'm wondering if you're ready to answer our 5 questions.
I'll give it a try. Time is an issue, so I'm going to hope my brain thinks of really good answers and not essays.
Totally. No, they'll be quick. The first question is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
From who? From my cells or from people?
Anything.
Anywhere. There are no limits and no right answers here.
The best advice I ever received was studying the cells and watching them, not telling cells what I expected of them, but observing cells showing me what they do. And when I realized cells are miniature humans, I saw that in 2nd grade. The first time I ever looked in a microscope and saw a cell, I noticed like the amoeba wasn't just like a pinball bouncing and hitting things. It was moving here, and then it moved over there, and then it went over there. And I was like, my God, it's got something going. So as a little kid, I looked at it and said, oh, little people. Yeah. And growing up to find out, guess what? There's not a whole new function. There's not one new function in the human body that's not already present in a single cell. Yeah. And all of a sudden I said, well, if you understand cells, then by definition, you understand the body. Yeah. And through my understanding of cells, my whole life was changed. So best advice I ever got was the knowledge that cells imparted about how environment is shaping genetics and behavior.
That's great.
Amazing. What about your proudest moment to date?
The proudest moment?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden what just came in my head is the moment I asked Margaret to marry me.
And
it was the proudest moment because I'd lived an entire life up to that point of I got married and it was like living my father's programming and the lousiness of relationships and giving up that love even existed or anything like that. And then to find myself after informing Margaret on every date that, well, if you're looking for a serious relationship, it's not me, because I already knew that's not going to work, So basically I said, but if we're going to have fun, let's just keep going out. And we kept having fun and we kept going out. And there was this moment that hit me. And it was a moment that I recognized if I wasn't able to answer a question about my life, let's say I was in a hospital and should we pull the plug, not pull the plug, whatever. The first time in my life I realized I trusted Margaret with the answer to that, whatever question it was. I realized I gave my trust to someone over my life. And for a moment, it was like, oh my God, I must be so in love with this person to say, Margaret, whatever your decision is, I'm there. And I was so proud of being in that moment to experience what full love was really all about after all the years of not owning it, accepting it, living the stupid ways. And then at that instant going, wow. And I asked her to marry me, and it was kind of fun because we'd gone out for a long time. And for a beginning, every time I go out, there was a little preamble. If you're looking for a long-term relationship, it's not me. And we go through this. And at one point she said, just stop with that preamble. Do you just want me to be here or not? We dropped the preamble, but it was always there until I heard myself in my third-party voice say, you're going to ask her to marry you. And I thought, what? A guy who has been resistant to this, that every day of his life after he got his divorce, shaving, I'll never get married again, a mantra. To hear that, and I thought, wow, you have come somewhere to be here and recognize the fullest meaning of love and sharing that I could ever imagine. When I said, I give control of my life to this woman if I'm not able to make that decision. And so, yes, I was proud of learning, boy, is that love? Yes, it is.
That's beautiful. The flip side of that, what has been one of your most difficult moments?
I guess there are a few of those in there. One of the more difficult moments was resigning my tenured position at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine, where I had a job for life. I was tenured. I was a professor and a research scientist. And one day when I realized they were not paying attention to my research because it didn't conform to their conventional belief system. And I thought, what, am I going to be in here forever and just defend myself? And at that point I said, nope. I had to come to a decision and say, you have to let go and get out of the system, a system that you've already been guaranteed a life job without anything after that. That was a pretty tough one.
Yeah.
But God bless it. It was one of the most important decisions because it allowed me to become a free thinker rather than to conform to convention.
Love that.
I feel that pain. I was there.
So we always ask, and people love this part, is what are your practices for self-care? What helps you drop in? What helps you connect to your spiritual self, your best self?
I don't know. I live that way every day because once it's not, a lot of people go to church on Sunday and they're spiritual for an hour and a half or whatever, and then they go home and they're back to their regular life again. In my case, not being spiritual at all until I was older and then getting it, it wasn't all of a sudden just, oh, that's a Sunday deal, man. This is like, oh my God, my whole life is this. And then at that point, to start to recognize this, I am a creator on this planet. I am a piece of God. I'm not separate from God. I'm not, I don't need somebody between me and God to tell me what to do. All of a sudden, it's like, matter of fact, screw them. I have my own relationship with a creator and me as a creation who also creates, co-creating. And so living my life that way has changed everything, because if you wake up with the morning, I'm creating this, and why would you wake up going, oh crap, it's another day? It's like, no, man, I wake up, it's like, I have no idea what's happening. Today is probably going to be pretty good. And it is. So that's the beautiful part.
Love that.
I love it. Look, obviously, Bruce, you're a really passionate guy. This podcast is called Ignited, and we always like to leave people with a question of, what is it that gets you ignited? What is it that gets you this fired up and this excited about everything in life?
The joy of being alive. Sometimes you eat a meal and you go, oh, that was really wonderful. And then you hear a piece of music and, oh, that was really wonderful. But what if everything you look at the world around you, and it's like, oh my God, that's a beautiful environment and all this. And guess what? I didn't always have an environment that was like, oh, I'm so happy to be here. When I learned to be the creator of my life in a sense of not falling into the program and manifesting, then guess what? I do live in an environment that's heaven on earth. And to me, the bottom line of my whole message is, people think, well, if you have a good life and you die and then you go to heaven, and I go, geez, I think that's really wrong. I think you were born into heaven because this is where you came to create. This is a creative environment. But if you're creating from other people's programs, then you're not creating, you're just following in a program. But once you start to recognize, I said, because this is a mechanism that spirit uses, moves me around and allows me to interface and manifest and all that. And so I live every day as I am in heaven every day. And you know what? It doesn't mean everything works out just the way I want, but you know what? I also realize this, if it doesn't work out, it's probably because it wasn't meant to work out. That I'm going to second guess the universe and say, I wanted this. And in the old days, I would have said, I wanted it, and I'm going to make it happen. And I could make it happen by working real hard, but then ending up with it going, that's not really what I wanted. I recognize, oh, the universe is already telling me you don't want that because it's not going to work. Fine. No more stress about this at all. It's not going to work. I got something else to do anyway. I'm not stuck here at the end. And so I live every day, wake up going, I have no idea what's going to happen today. But so far, I'm here, and that's a great start.
I love it.
Thank you for that. Thank you for igniting our audience and listeners and family here, and just being such an inspiration. Adi hasn't shut up about your book in months, and it makes me really happy to kind of bridge the gap between science and spirituality, especially for us, because that's kind of like our jam.
Well, I am so appreciative for two reasons. A, as I said in the beginning, this is an opportunity to talk to an audience. And any single one who wakes up is another addition to the heaven on earth vision. And the more that see heaven on earth, the more it manifests as such. And that's my destination at some point. Number 2 is to be here in front of you and reflecting very much the same kind of relationship that Margaret and I have, as a cooperative, connected, sharing life and creating life from a very different point of view. And therefore becoming models. You're models for those people that you talk with.
Yeah.
And that was the issue why when I first started talking about it, I wasn't a model. I had conscious information, but I was sure hell wasn't a model for it. But I had to learn that to live it. And then it became a model. And then when I talked about it, people went, oh yeah, sounds good. Same story. But before it was like, really? Now it's like, oh yeah. So I appreciate you being models for this and helping everyone, because everyone that moves toward this is helping our evolution.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your work and your time.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Please do me a favor, because Bruce's work is worth all the exposure in the world. Screenshot this, tag the 3 of us and Ignited, and give us like the one little nugget that is the leave behind for you that really opened up your mind, and then go buy his book.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Bruce. That was awesome.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Marianne Williamson?
Well, she's a very nice person with very good ideas, but considering the way politics works, that's like she's lost in a storm out there.
Yeah.
It's like very nice, but that doesn't mean she's going to capture an audience of the United States at all. As a matter of fact.
Did you get her speech last night on CNN or no?
Margaret listened to it. I
forgot about it. Yeah. It's so sad that she's just like not in a place yet where she can be received, you know?
Absolutely. And she's going to talk to us because we're open to this, but is the general population ready for this? I don't think necessarily. They're going to have to be sold something from somebody who's got some limelight already, because to build a fire at this moment, unless she to perform some miracle on stage and everybody went, then she's just going to be another face out there. And with God, how many candidates are there now?
I know.
And if you had to rate them, she wouldn't come anywhere near the top half.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately.
So you have a choice. You're going to put energy into something. You're going to put energy into something that's not going to really manifest. Yeah. And I said, no, if I got energy, I'm going to have to put it into a destination that I think at least has a chance.
Yeah. I know. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us.
Talk soon.
I so appreciate it. Thank you both for being there.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.